Hello, and welcome to the reading of my story, Feeding Time, written by Sadisteck. A meter underground, in a cramped but safe den, Lupo the wolf begins to wake. The dark, soft dirt was irritating to sleep on, but safe enough to allow him to relax. This current den has proven itself safe for far longer than he could have hoped. It has thankfully provided Lupo and his pack some reprieve for now. He lays silent and still in an attempt to enjoy his relaxed and barely awake state. A short-lived pleasantry as his stomach begins to ache and rumble, reminding him he has not eaten recently. Lupo shifts his head to the left and peers into one of the connecting tunnels in the den. His family has burrowed deeper than he is able to. The light of the den is dim at best, and trying to see into a side tunnel proves fruitless and leaves him feeling silly for trying. Lupo's large frame could not easily fit down the same holes as the rest of his pack, so he simply guards the entrance. As the alpha, it falls on him to protect them, even from a creature he surely stands no chance. Hungry but awake, he crawls and shifts his body to get closer to the entrance of the den. As soon as he is only a breath away from the opening, he stops and uses some of his senses to survey what could possibly be nearby, prey or predator. The first sensory change noticeable is simply the air quality. Deeper in the den it is stale, and the slightest motion kicks up dirt. This close to the opening, he smells fresh forest air. A gentle breeze pulls crisp autumn air into his face, which he happily inhales. The aroma of fallen leaves and distant storms are without a doubt some of Lupo's favorite scents. He closes his eyes and listens intently for any sudden sound not made by the forest itself. The breeze is constant, but not strong enough to do much more than move leaves. The trees do have a creak to them, but only barely. In the slight distance, he can hear the stream flowing and splashing moderately louder than usual. Lupo is attempting to hear any other living thing. Moments pass, minutes perhaps. Then something catches his attention. A rustling sound followed by a gentle but definite crunch of leaves, and then silence. Something had mistakenly kicked up some leaves, stepped on a new pile, and then abruptly stopped moving. Whatever it was seemed far too small to worry Lupo. Additionally, how it froze after making a sound told him that this critter was also being cautious, trying not to alert her. His stomach let out another groan, perhaps in response to Lupo realizing there is some sort of food in earshot of him right now. Slowly, he opens his eyes and peers out of the den, letting them adjust to the light hitting his face for the first time in a while. As quiet as possible, he fidgets his way out of the den's opening and crawls to his feet. As good as it feels to not be restrained in a cramped space, he still needs to be vigilant and observe his surroundings. Quickly looking around him and up at the trees, Lupo doesn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Behind him is a large tree with a wide base that his predecessor deemed worthy to dig a new den under, a choice that Lupo reluctantly has come to agree with. In his early years as a pup, Lupo and his entire pack had a den out in the open, around one of the largest trees in the forest. Felled by human interaction many seasons before his birth, the stump of the tree was high enough for the wolves to see all that surrounded them, but not so high that it was difficult for an adult wolf to climb. This tree had been cut, but never died. Many new shoots grew off the rim of the stump, providing a wall at their backs. The top layer of the root system was raised above the ground after potentially a century or more of weathering, and many of the trees that grew close by were in fact more shoots growing off the raised roots. Lupo lets out a gentle sigh for the memories, playing with his brothers and sisters at the base of the stump, crawling through the exposed roots and digging beneath them, memorizing the paths through the tangled roots and which ones he could fit through as he grew larger. If he remembers correctly, there were only two paths he could still fit through before the wolves had to abandon that den. Something far more dangerous than wolves, or any natural predator for that matter, has changed the life of every creature in this forest. Visitors and other worldly monstrosities being dumped here by the humans have upset the balance of this forest. Sharply, Lupo shakes his head and tries to focus. First, he needs to get his muscles and body out of the relaxed and sleepy state. He stretches each leg slowly, one by one, then rotates his head till he brings on a yawn. In a final stretching motion, he arcs his back and raises it as high as he can, while bringing his face close to the ground.
That's better,
Lupo thinks as he feels his joints and muscles wake up. Next, he needs to try and figure out where that critter was exactly. Most animals in this forest rarely leave their dens now. Only searching for food or a mate would cause anyone to risk being out in the open, day or night. The latter typically happens in spring, so Lupo can presume he will be hunting another hungry and likely skinny critter. Or perhaps the creature found its hiding hole and flushed it out, and now it searches for a new den. Lupo's musings are interrupted by another bit of rustling of leaves. He freezes and listens. Again, whatever caused the sound also stopped. The sound came from close by, maybe 3 or 4 trees behind him. Slowly and meticulously, Lupo turns and peers around the edge of the tree, masterfully avoiding any leaves or twigs with his paws. His eyes focus and his mouth waters as he spies on the bunny that is currently scratching at the dirt along the base of a tree. After a few moments of scratching in several different places along the tree's trunk, it turns and slowly makes its way towards another tree, away from Lupo. This is good. The bunny has turned its back on Lupo without realizing he is even near. With focus and precision, he creeps out from behind his dense tree towards the rabbit at a slight angle, placing a new tree between them, just in case it turns to survey its surroundings. What has this critter so cautious is far more terrifying than a simple wolf. But nonetheless, any prey catching a glimpse of a predator closing in would undoubtedly cause the prey to be reckless and dash off. With Lupo being so famished, he would much prefer a short chase, if any. He doubts his chances of being able to close the gap between them enough to make the catch in a single pounce. But perhaps whatever this rabbit is focusing on will let Lupo surprise it more easily. In this sense, the silence of the forest actually helps Lupo in the hunt. Typically, with all the unknown background noises, every prey would constantly look up and survey its surroundings every 3 to 5 seconds out of uncertainty. But now the critters simply focus on their task, and unless they are making a noise, they simply try to complete it as quickly as possible so they can return to their hiding spots. As long as Lupo stays nearly silent and downwind, he should be able to get extremely close before the distracted rabbit even notices anything. For now, he continues his creeping path, staying behind trees as best he can. Lupo has been hunting since he was a young wolf. He was blessed to be the largest of his mother's and his aunt's litters, and not simply by a little bit. He might rightfully be the largest wolf this forest has ever housed. It took Lupo a while to realize how to use this extra mass to his advantage. His longer legs help him run faster, but he is much slower on the turns, until he realized he could use his weight to dig his paws into the ground for as sharp as a 90-degree turn mid-run. Although the strain is not always worth it, but it is a benefit to know what his body is capable of. In any matter, Lupo is now extremely close to the rabbit. Only two more trees, and then a short opening to clear before he is in pouncing range. Saliva quite literally dripping from his mouth, Lupo's gaze trained on the defenseless bunny scratching aimlessly at the base of the tree. He begins to step out from behind the final tree, but pauses. All of his focus now shifts to a loud thump in the distance. The rabbit noticed it as well and pauses to look around. Luckily, Lupo was still behind a tree. In a completely different direction comes another dull thud. Both Lupo and the rabbit stand frozen except for their heads quickly looking in all directions, listening for any other abnormal sounds. Silence once again from everything except the forest and river. Quite a while passes before Lupo realizes he was holding his breath. At the same moment he exhales, the rabbit also returns to his curious task of scratching at the base of the tree. Both sounds, which came from opposite directions, were much too far away to be an immediate concern. With any luck, at least one of them was the creature, and from that distance it should pose no threat to Lupo today. Not for this hopefully short hunt, at least. Before Lupo could compose himself to continue closing the distance between the two of them, the rabbit looked up and carefully made its way towards another tree. It was too much to hope for that the busy bunny keeps its back to Lupo, although the rabbit did come to a tree that is much closer. Frozen stiff, Lupo realizes his tail is exposed from the rabbit's new position. It hasn't seemed to have noticed yet, but simply pulling it behind the tree is extremely likely to alert his prey to Lupo's existence. The best odds are to wait for the rabbit to become distracted again with his curious task and make a sudden leap for it. This will certainly take more luck than Lupo is used to relying on, but with the rabbit this close, it is only a matter of moments before it notices the furry tail, or simply smells the wolf in proximity. At last, the moment arises. The bunny has its face in the dirt and its view is blocked. Lupo brings his tail behind the tree and takes a few silent steps to the opposite side in order to align himself for the pounce. Lupo crouches low and judges the distance. His long and powerful legs press down and catapult him into the air. Lupo will land short, as expected, but unfortunately the rabbit has also decided to change spots while the wolf was in midair. There is no possible way for Lupo to land without making a sound, and surely this rabbit, no longer focused on its task, will dart off the moment it realizes it's not alone. If the rabbit had just kept its head down for 2 seconds longer, Lupo would have easily had it in his mouth soon. His best bet is to simply land with full force and begin running, expecting a chase to ensue. Lupo lands, leaves crunch, and dirt is kicked up as each of his paws begin digging into the dirt in an attempt to dart towards the bunny. As expected, his prey doesn't even bother to look towards the sound and dashes off in the opposite direction. Lupo is so close to the rabbit right now, keeping pace and closing in ever so slightly. The rabbit's only hope is to use the trees to its advantage and make tight turns around them in hopes that Lupo is unable to follow as swiftly. This tactic works for a short time. The first bend around a tree gave the rabbit quite a bit of extra distance, but Lupo quickly learns the rabbit's pattern. It is simply making the turns at every tree it can get close to, which is smart but predictable. At the very next tree, while the rabbit passes by the tree, then makes the turn, Lupo preemptively made a much more gentle turn, cutting onto the opposite side of the tree than the rabbit tried to force him. Up ahead, Lupo notices his old den. The trees growing off the root system create a sort of walled-off area, and if this bunny continues its same tactic, then it will lead itself to a cornered area. Lupo wants to be sure the rabbit does not try to break left, so he veers off slightly to the left side, just enough to where his prey can see him out of the corner of its eye. Lupo also keeps up his speed, not letting the rabbit have the chance to slow down enough to make the leap through the gaps in the trees. Now, past any potential turns the rabbit could have made, there is only one more choice the rabbit can make. With Lupo on his left and a wall of trees on his right, they are both headed towards yet another wall of trees also made from the root system of this beast of a tree. With no other options, the rabbit must turn right, which leads directly to the back of the massive stump and is also unpassable from this side. Lupo slows down a bit, fully intending to block the opening after the rabbit realizes the trap it fell into and then attempts to escape. As predicted, the bunny turned right, and then Lupo hears a thud.
Did the panic of the chase cause the rabbit to slam into the stump?
Lupo pondered. Something only described as unease began to grow in his mind. This chase lasted far longer than he planned, and certainly was much louder. Lupo has not been near his old den in a long time because the beast frequented this area. Fresh claw marks on the trees, far too high and wide to be a wolf's, show she was here recently. In fact, the rabbit has not even tried to make a dash past him for the open path. Lupo slowed to a walk and got close to the wall of trees on his right, creeping forward still, the hunger in his belly not letting him end his pursuit early. The feeling of unease is now full-blown dread. Every muscle in his body is rapidly becoming heavier and harder to move, but still he pushes towards the bounty of his chase. His primal instinct to hunt and eat pushing him forward. Those instincts are not easily overwhelmed. The desire to survive and the pride to not let any quarry escape. Lupo comes to the corner and clearly hears crunching and snapping now, of bones breaking, being crushed and bitten. He pauses for a moment. Nearly every thought in his mind is to run. But curiosity kills more than just cats. As swiftly as he can, he peeks his head around the corner and then back. He made no sound, but what he saw terrified even him. It was mostly a blur, but he saw all he needed to send chills down his back and cause his already sluggish muscles to stiffen even further. A thin, lengthy arm with a wide hand that has elongated fingers which come to sharp claws. In the hand is the rabbit's head, squeezed and crushed till only the fact that the ears dangling from the lump of mass show that it was once a head. The other arm was outstretched, propped against the tree, gripping the lower half of the rabbit, the legs dangling with blood dripping from the toes and running down the tree. Its face is always the most terrifying, deep sunken eyes, both wide, always staring, never blinking. No nose or snout, just a mouth full of dark teeth, black and gray except when covered in blood, which gives them a sickening deep red tint. Unless it is eating, its mouth is nearly always open, waiting to bite down, waiting to bring death. Along its back runs a segment of plate bones, from the top of its short tail right up to the monster's brow. This bone is the only part of the creature not a shade of black or gray. This bone is bright red. This monstrosity does not belong here. It was not born here. It was abandoned, dumped here by some humans to save another area. One of their cities, no doubt. All good and well for them, but now it wreaks havoc and murders everything in this forest it catches, not just for food, but for the sake of seeing blood and death. After a few moments, it would seem the creature didn't notice Lupo as he took a peek. This belief that he was unnoticed allows Lupo's tense muscles to relax slightly. However, the feeling of dread remains. Although the monster has not come out from the other side of the tree, Lupo feels as if he is being watched. He has just noticed there is no longer any crunching sounds coming from around the corner. In fact, he hears nothing from over there any longer. Suddenly, the chills down his back get warm, as if a breath was gently let out along his spine. As stiff as his muscles were, it pained him when he made the sharp jump away from the tree. Rotating roughly 90 degrees, he lands facing the direction he just leapt from, and froze in place as he stares the monster dead in its eyes. Only now, it isn't the same terrifying beast he just saw. Now, clinging to the side of the tree, its head low and bent back in an unnatural way, and with its feet above its body, the monster appears to be a young human girl. She must have crawled down silently for Lupo to not notice as she got that close. Only the dark pits that act as her eyes have stayed the same. It has a crooked smile with a hint of blood on her lips. Thin, childish fingers are effortlessly digging into the tree's bark. She is wearing a dark dress with red trim and a red hood. On her feet are a pair of black, laced-up boots. Thin chrome chains dangle from her hips and skirt. Her legs are covered in fishnet stockings, one red and the other black. The skin appears to be unassuming at first glance, but when you look long enough, you'll notice the fair peach skin tone shifts to a darker hue, as if a shadow just fell on her. But there is no shadow. The monster is changing its own color.
Hello, doggy.
It says in the least threatening voice you can imagine. Then it lets out a childish giggle. This would have seemed innocuous, if only it had ever once moved its mouth, rather than simply opening it wide. This creature can absorb its victims when needed to learn their language and gain their form. This poor human child it appears as now must have been one of her favorite victims. She often strolls through the forest in this form, carelessly humming and skipping, undoubtedly looking for things to murder. Lupo has witnessed this obscenely cruel attack firsthand. Much of the forest has. It was no quiet day when she first arrived here. The human machines were loud and drew everyone's attention. Those who fled and hid were the smartest of us. Everyone else grew curious and inspected the commotion. After the humans left, the creature was hunched over in a slumber, but trying to wake up. Some unnatural force kept her groggy and sluggish. That was the only hope some of the critters of this forest had, because even in this state, her desire to kill was an instinct that didn't require her to even be alert. The most curious of us ventured far too close. Once in reach, the groggy monster's claw was ferociously swift. In a moment, several animals became red clouds and chunks of meat slammed against the distant tree. We were all horrified and shocked, but then we noticed a screaming, helpless fox in her hand, struggling fruitlessly. The noises that fox made as its body was being absorbed were horrendous and haunting. It only took a minute, but when she stood, she dropped what was once the fox's body. What hit the ground was a dried-out dark lump of flesh and bones only. Then we all stared in even more horror as the creature's body contorted in on itself and shrank to become the spitting image of the fox it had just defiled. Wherever this thing came from, this ability to camouflage itself must have been a necessity. In a human city, there were certainly plenty of obstacles and people hunting it that needed to be avoided. Blending in and adapting would be one of the best tactics. But here, there is nothing to threaten it. This is a beast, a murderous creature dropped into a land of bunnies and squirrels. The foxes and wolves were the only real entertainment to be found in this forest. And shortly after getting a taste of the original fox, this monster made it a personal goal to hunt each one of them due to some sick fascination. And it did just that. Weeks after arriving, she had eradicated every last fox and was on her way through most other species. To Lupo's knowledge, the only animal she has not yet absorbed is a wolf. Wolves are fast enough to outrun her if given a chance, but also vicious and brave enough to try and fight if cornered. Make no mistake, the wolves are no real match for her, but a fight that ends in death is far better than enduring the process of being absorbed. This beast either can't or won't absorb a dead body. However, it will eat them in a disturbing way. Snapping back to his present, Lupo focuses intently on the creature happily staring back at him. His heart is beating harder and louder than ever before. This must be fear flushing through him. Pure, terrified fear. As frozen as he is in place, his mind races, trying to devise the best course of action. Typically, in the rare situation a wolf is faced with a fight or flight option, the quicker the decision was made, the better the outcome. But that was before, and Lupo has witnessed pack members felled by hastily choosing incorrectly. This creature is not nearly as fast as Lupo, however this beast is also well fed, and Lupo has not eaten decently in days. In a race of time, this beast will catch him. Ripping its thin fingers from the tree and crawling, almost slithering, onto the forest floor, Lupo seizes this opportunity and lunges at the girl's face, exposing his teeth and growling as viciously as he can. The creature, being in an awkward position, belly down on the ground and feet still on the tree, simply pushes off the tree and slides underneath Lupo's assault. This, however, is exactly what he intended, and as soon as he lands, Lupo sprints off down the path that he originally came when chasing the rabbit. Once past the trees that have grown too close together to pass through, he turns left and circles back towards his original den and its weaving underground root system. A violent, unnatural roar, mixed with a human scream, mixed with some ungodly crunching or grinding sound, erupted from where Lupo just was. The trees here have grown too close to pass through, but Lupo can still see the beast through the gaps as he runs. Feeling pleased that he was able to mislead the creature and form a gap between them, he focuses on the stump and its roots. This gnarly mess of wood protruding out of the ground forms a maze that has many openings, of which only 3 of them are large enough for something Lupo's size to enter, and only one doesn't constrict so much that passage would be impossible. The beast, now back to its full size, is clawing and pulling the ground underneath it in chase of Lupo. He rushes and enters the root gap just before the creature makes it around the trees. With luck, she didn't see which opening Lupo went for. The wolf goes deeper into the root system and into the darkness of the stump and earth. He must crawl and pull his body down before making his way back towards the surface. Lupo hears the creature at the stump now. Its frustrated sounds are unsettling at best. He can also hear it scratching at the tree's roots and snapping wood. Whether this slowed the beast down or not, Lupo must still hurry. A bit has changed since he was last under this tree, but except for a small amount of digging, he made it to the other end. Lupo could see light. He quickly pulled himself from the hole and surveyed the area. Then he realized there was silence. No fervid scratching or breaking of large pieces of roots, and more importantly, no frustrated roars, if you could even call that sound a roar. Moving away from the tree, Lupo frantically looks for the beast. He sees movement and his focus snaps to that spot. A hole in the root system has something in it, one of the tunnels that Lupo is much too large to fit into. He is still backing up as something furry hops out of the hole. Its orange and white fur have a beautiful but disturbing undershadow shimmering within. When it lands, the fox looks up and stares at Lupo with those sunken black eyes. The bastard made itself smaller to fit through any of the pathways. It takes one menacing step towards Lupo, and he realizes now there is no more tricks. This will be a chase, one that Lupo is certain to lose, but he must try. He turns and dashes off away from his new den. At the very least, he can lead it away from his family. What started off as soft rustling of leaves turned into heavy steps and claws digging into the ground to gain traction. There is a stream nearby, and with any luck, the creature will hesitate to follow Lupo as he dives in. It is certainly a risky play to choose to be swept away by the current instead of elongating the chase. Without looking, he can tell he was pulling away from the creature. Its heavy footsteps were growing faint, and the psychotic noises coming from its mouth were becoming more furious, but also unmistakably further away. There is very little chance she would give up the chase this quickly, so Lupo decides to continue with his plan, make it to the stream, and be swept away. He has always been a strong swimmer for a wolf. Even in this weakened and hungry state, he can stay afloat for long enough to escape. The sound of flowing water grows in his ears. The stream is only a few moments away. A quick peek backwards, and he sees no pursuer, only trees and the leaves he has kicked up while running. Peculiar, but not unwelcomed. Arriving at the bank, Lupo throws himself into the center of the stream, which seems to be much larger than he remembers. Heavy rainfall upstream, perhaps? He lands in the water and is carried along according to plan. He effortlessly keeps his head above the water and tries to relax as the current does the work for him. His body slams into something hard and rigid. There is a solid wall above the water and something else below. It is blocking his path, but not impeding the flow of the stream. Momentarily dazed, Lupo quickly regains his focus and pushes off the metal bars that run down below the surface. He struggles, but makes his way to the far side of the stream and pulls himself from the water. Soaked and confused, he surveys the landscape. From where he came seems to be open forest with many trees and the flowing river. However, the direction he was going seems to be walled off. He cranes his neck to search for the top of the wall, but he does not find an end. Slight panic sets in as he looks both ways. The wall seems to continue in opposite directions and curve back in on itself. The closer Lupo gets, the more he can see a blurred version of himself staring back. The surface of the wall has a mirrored but textured finish. The reflection of the trees behind him make the forest seem unending in all directions. Inexplicably, Lupo notices many bright flashes of light coming from just behind the wall. Startled, he dashes off away from the wall and back into the trees. After he can no longer see that strange structure, Lupo stops and looks around. Seeing nothing out of the ordinary, he finally thinks to shake the remaining water off his fur and takes the time to breathe.
How long has that been there? What did those damn humans do now?
He asks himself. It must be new, but there is no sign of any recent changes. How long has it been since he's ventured this far from his den? While pondering this, Lupo feels a strange pain in his head, as if trying to remember certain things are causing his mind stress. Before he could ponder too long on the matter, a far more pressing issue arises. Humming catches his attention, faint but not distant. The beast is still in pursuit, of course it is. That thing only lives to hunt and kill. Lupo cannot stay here. He is too hungry to outrun it. With that wall, he is not able to make an escape anyway. His only hope now lies in winning a fight. While many wolves have fought, none have won, though several have caused injury to the creature. Maybe simply causing it some pain will provide a chance to make it back to his den. It's certainly a risky move that, if executed poorly, could lead this thing straight to his family. He must wound it deep. Being the largest wolf this forest has ever grown will certainly pay off in this test. A surprise attack is his best option. Looking around, Lupo spots a cluster of trees whose trunks have fused. That will provide the best possible hiding spot to leap from. He makes his way silently to the far side of the trees and waits, listening.
Where did the doggy go? Is he here? Nope. I know how to find him, though.
There was a small rustle of leaves, and then eerie silence. A forest without her musings is often a wonderful thing, but when you know she is near, there is nothing more unsettling, except for her eyes and teeth, of course. Lupo listens for anything out of the ordinary. Moments pass, but then he hears it, an unassuming caw in the sky. Lupo looks up just in time to meet the gaze of the hawk diving right towards him. There is no time to react. Lupo is petrified and can simply watch the hawk as it transforms into the massive beast. Still falling towards him at an alarming speed, the creature's growl grows louder and you hear the sound of a giddy human child saying,
I caught the puppy!
The moment before she lands, Lupo shuts his eyes tight, and his last thought is how he failed his pack, his family. After the creature lands, the semi-mirrored wall begins to rattle and shake. Flashes of lights spark from behind the wall as the human spectators cheer and take pictures. A teenage boy shouts, "Holy shit, I bet nobody has ever seen anything more gruesome at a zoo before." Several young children are crying as their parents try to comfort them, saying, "No, darling, don't cry. It was only a robot wolf. It was only playing with the mocking hunter. Honey, I told you not to let them see that. They are way too young." Back in the enclosure, the beast rips and tears at what was once Lupo's body. Fur and lab-grown meat fall off his mechanical body as the creature meticulously removes each piece of food and discards the now twisted and crushed metal. Enjoying a meal well earned, she howls after several mouthfuls. Deep underground, another Lupo has already been built and is being slid into place through a trap door under the den, all in preparation for dinner in a few hours. Thank you for making it to the end, and hopefully you enjoyed the reading of Feeding Time. This was a passion project of mine that I began many years ago, along with several other stories and books I wish to one day finish. My original desire was to do every bit of work from start to finish myself. However, I was never quite happy with how my voice for Lupo or the monster turned out. It quickly became clear that I would not be able to bring the voices I envisioned into reality, so I made the decision to seek the services of voice actors. Both will be credited in the description. If you enjoyed this work, I would appreciate a like and share. A lot went into creating this. Writing the story was fun, but revisions were daunting. Editing the video took ages, twice for some reason, and with any luck, actually finishing this project will motivate me to work on my other, much larger writing projects. Well, either way, have a good night and enjoy.